Hello world, my name is Hristina Crenn, a webinar intern at onehealthlessons.com. Today I have the privilege to talk with Doreen Anene, who is actually a Schlumberger Fellow. She's also a fourth-year PhD student at the University of Nottingham in the UK. And also she's the founder and the main executive director of the Belle Association and organization, who is actually trying to promote the importance of women's rights in terms of educational opportunities. Hello, Doreen. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Hristina. I'm fine. I'm well. Thank you. How are you yourself?
I'm doing well as well, thank you. I would like at first to really thank you once again for accepting the invitation to record this interview with me.
Oh,
Um,
it's
we would like, for instance, at first to know more about you
yeah.
and your research. Like, what are you doing currently regarding your research?
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, Hristina. Again, on One Health Lessons, it's really a privilege and an honor for me to be on your prestigious platform to share my story, my academic journey, and my career path, and hopefully my future plans. So I'll just dive straight into your question. What's a bit about me and what my research is about. So, like you rightly mentioned, I'm a fourth year fellow at the University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, and my PhD is sponsored by Schlumberger Foundation. So, Schlumberger, the funding is called Schlumberger Faculty for the Future Foundation, and the whole aim is that Schlumberger is sponsoring or funding women from developing countries to carry out PhDs or study for PhDs and postdocs in developed countries. So it's very emotional for me, and it excites me and encourages me because Schlumberger has put their money where their mouth is. You know, they're pulling women from developing countries and empowering them with education. And it's very iconic. It's very coincidental that today is International Day of Education, and look at us talking about education and women. Anyway, that's just about me. I'm a Schlumberger Faculty for the Future Foundation Fellow, and I'm also the founder and the program director at the Belle. What we do at the Belle is we're trying to close the gender gap in STEM fields. So we're attracting, we are retaining, and then we're advancing girls from low income communities into STEM subjects and ultimately STEM careers. We are also empowering teachers and positioning them to be 21st century teachers so they can remain inspiring STEM mentors and ambassadors to the girls. I'll dive straight into what my research is about. So my research is looking at the variation in feed efficiencies in individual hens and how it influences egg quality and egg safety. So typically in any production enterprise, in any livestock production enterprise, feed is a major denominator. It rakes about 60 to 70% of total production cost. So if profit must be made, if farmers must make profit, if production must be sustainable, that means feed consumption has to be sustainable. You know, feed consumption has to be sustainable, and then it has to be efficient enough to produce what we need. I'll give you an instance. If in a poultry setting, right, you need to feed a certain amount of feed to get a certain amount of meat in a broiler setting, for example. You don't want to feed, for example, you don't want to feed a lot of feed. You don't want to give the birds a lot of feed and you don't get a lot of meat. So I'll come back, since I work with eggs, I work with layers. I'll come back to the layer setting. So what my research is doing is we're looking at hens on an individual scale, and we're identifying their feed efficiencies, so the rate of conversion of feed to eggs. We want to see those birds that really convert the feed and the nutrients they consume into eggs, and those who don't really do that, who are not as efficient. And then we're looking at the eggs that we get from these same birds. So the high feed efficiency birds, we're looking at the eggs that come from these birds. The low feed efficiency birds, we're looking at the eggs that comes from these birds, and then we're identifying differences. Are there, for the hen, are there differences in body weight? Are there differences in feed conversion or feed intake? Are there differences in egg weight and egg mass? And in the eggs, are there differences in the albumin quality? Are there differences in microbial resistances? You know, are there differences in the protein concentrations, the different protein concentrations? Are there differences in the shell quality? So it's more like a tale of two stories, you know, a tale of two hens. You have the high feed efficient hen, the low feed efficient hen, and we're looking at the differences. And then we're now going forward to see what are the differences in egg quality in these groups, and how does it influence egg safety, because we consume the eggs. So we need to make sure that we're producing high quality eggs. I try to avoid scientific jargon because I know that the audience for this video could be very large and varied. And that's why you've not heard any scientific jargon. I've tried to tell it in a story, so it's easy for everyone to pick up and understand.
Absolutely. I am myself from the social science background, and I am not familiar with veterinary medicine at all. I just started to learn a few months ago, so which is really a relatively new project for me. Especially learning about the concept and the notions of One
Yeah.
Health and veterinary medicine. I was wondering, how can we relate your research to One Health?
Oh, beautiful. So the concept of One Health, as you know, or anyone who doesn't know, is that it cuts across human, animal, and environmental interactions to create, a balance in the ecosystem. That's correct. Yeah. Now, when there is my research basically has everything to do with One Health, because when there's an imbalance in environmental health, right? So when you have, for example, climate change, deforestation, and all that. Now, the environment itself, there's going to be like an imbalance, right, in animal interaction with the environment. Right? So when for example, there's an imbalance in environmental health, there's now going to be a resultant imbalance in the animals interacting with the environment. Thank you. So you start absolutely. So you start to see that the animals that hitherto would get their food and shelter from wildlife, bushes, right, forest, are displaced because the environment, deforestation has taken place, climate change is taking place, you've displaced the animals. Now, what do the animals do? They start to encroach human spaces, right? They start encroaching human spaces and, trying to fend for themselves. So you start to see, rodent infestation in human spaces. You start to see wildlife, coyotes and foxes, wandering in human spaces. It shouldn't really be so. Now, linking it to my research, one of the leading causes of food poisoning is salmonellosis. And this is typically caused by salmonella. Now, hen and hen products, specifically eggs, because I work in eggs at this moment, has been incriminated to be a major carrier of salmonella. Right. So now what happens is that the rodents, rodents, they are known to urinate and defecate every and anywhere. So for instance, the rodents come into a feed mill that produces feed that the birds would eat. They urinate and defecate everywhere. And then the urine of these rodents contain salmonella amongst other organisms, right? So they urinate like in this feed mill, probably on feed ingredients or even already processed feed. And then, it's mixed and it gets into the food chain of these birds, and it's consumed by the birds. Now, what happens is that you have salmonella indirectly has been introduced into the system of these birds. What it translates into is that it could bring down the birds with salmonellosis, which influences egg quality. And if the egg is served, is consumed by humans, probably it's not properly cooked, or is consumed by a child who has a weak, or someone who has a weak immune system, then that person, that consumer, that egg consumer stands a chance and could come down with food poisoning, which could lead to death.
Indeed, and I was wondering in this case, what are the methods that basically veterinary specialists or people like you use to basically detect salmonella in the eggs? Like,
Well, there are so many means to detect salmonella in the eggs. Typically, there are so many lab processes that you can use to detect salmonella in the eggs. But standard production procedures has to be done to make sure that this doesn't get, because a consumer will not be able to detect. When you pick an egg, you won't be able to tell if there is salmonella in that egg.
absolutely.
Right. And all of this is going from production to plate. So the whole aim is to avoid salmonella that comes into the protection system at every chance. But there are so many means, there are quite a number of means to detect salmonella in the egg. All of that can be done in the laboratory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So the second way, this is now internally, getting salmonella internally from the hen through the eggs to the consumer. Rodents that have been set loose from their natural habitat into human spaces. Typically in low-income countries, eggs are not being refrigerated when they're stored. So they're stored in warehouses or rooms and all that. Now, these rodents, when they're set loose, could, climb these eggs, urinate on these eggs, pass feces on these eggs. And these eggs are sold to consumers who eat them. And, you're handling food, anything, whatever is on the shell could get into the egg, and you see people come down with food poisoning and all of that. So this is how my research connects to One Health. Now, what my research is doing, the results for my research has shown that, the albumin from high feed efficient, remember I talked about high feed efficient eggs from high feed efficient hens earlier. The results from my research has shown that albumin that are collected from eggs from high feed efficient hens have a better resistance to salmonella compared to the albumin that was gotten from eggs laid by low feed efficient birds. Now, that is really interesting and fascinating, but there is still a lot more work to be done. So going back to your question, there's a lot more work to be done, and that's why we need more people in science to come on board and, put hands together to solve One Health problems, probably food security problems, and public health problems generally.
indeed, and I think that to some extent we should also include the policymakers, because they are the ones who basically draft thousands of rules regarding food safety or food nutrition. I mean, or nutrition about farm animals, etc., etc. So basically, there is an interdisciplinary approach as well to take into consideration regarding the One Health, in my opinion, as well. For instance, I'm really curious to know about the activities of your Belle organization. Could you please tell us more? What is that organization about? What you're doing currently, and what are maybe your future plans? And how is that related to women's rights as well?
Oh, lovely. Thank you for that question. So the stem bell means belle is a French word that means a beautiful girl. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So the STEM bell means a beautiful girl in science. And we have that name because a lot of girls feel, there's stereotypes that has eaten deep into the society's fabric and has made lots of girls to think that if you're in science, you can be stylish. Some even think that if you're in science, you can get married and you can have children. So we're trying to pass the message that you can be everything. You can be very confident in stilettos, in steel toes, right? Very confident in steel toes, the shoes that engineers wear. And you can also be very elegant in stilettos, what a typical lady, or not a typical lady, what people expect a typical lady to wear, right? So you can be elegant in stilettos and very confident in steel toes. And that's the message we're bringing to girls across the world, especially girls who live and school in low-income communities. We have been operating for 3 years. We have a major presence in Nigeria, but we also have a footprint in Ghana and in Pakistan, and we've been running different programs to achieve this goal. But the ultimate is that we're trying to attract girls to science subjects, and we start working with them when they're really young. So we try to attract them to science subjects. Then we retain them in science classes, and then we advance them into science careers as they progress through. We also work with teachers. We're particular about developing teachers. So we're trying to position as many science teachers as possible to be 21st century teachers, so they can continue to be inspiring mentors and models to the girls and boys in their schools and their communities.
Absolutely. You mentioned that STEM Belle basically means a beautiful girl in science. For instance, before creating this organization, did you notice some change in your community that needs to be done that motivated you for creating this organization? Like
Of
basically,
course.
yeah.
Of course. So I had my university education in northern Nigeria. I have 3 sisters, 2 of which are engineers. And when we come home to talk, we talk about, and all my sisters and my brothers are all in science. Now, when we come home and we're just catching up, we tell stories. We tell each other stories about how there's such a huge divide at the number of girls to boys in STEM classes, especially engineering classes. You have a bit more girls in biological sciences, right? I was in biological sciences, but in physical sciences and tech, there's very few girls. So we always talk about it, and we just talk about how strange it is that there are not many girls doing engineering and tech and architecture and all that. Now, when I went to have my master's degree, I went to University of Ghana in Ghana for my master's degree. During that period, I got into a volunteering program. It was organized by the United UN Women, yeah, United Nations Women, and it was called the Global Champion for Change volunteering program. Now, I engaged in that program for 6 months, and at the end of the 6 months, we had to do an on-site project. Right, we had to do an on-site project or a virtual project. I chose to do an on-site project. So I decided, since I was in Ghana, a new country, I decided to visit a couple of schools and just see the perception of girls towards engineering and tech. And when I got there, I played a game with the girls, and I told them that, okay, I was going to call out a course or a career or a profession, and they would tell me whether boys or girls should do that, whether it's appropriate for boys or girls. And I went from marine engineering to biomedical engineering to architecture to medicine to nursing to teaching to fashion designing. I called out a long list of professions, and they told me what boys should be and what girls should be. And I'll tell you the result of that game. The result was that those girls, about 70 of them that I spoke with, they concluded, or they had the impression, that girls can only be nurses, bankers, caterers, fashion designers, and maybe doctors. Every other profession should be girls, should be boys. And I went on to find out why they thought so. And they were telling me about how, they are made to understand that if you're an architect or a structural engineer, it will be difficult for you to find a husband and they all want to get married. It would be difficult for you to keep your home, or it would be difficult for you to give birth to children. And this is what they want to do. So they are not doing these courses because they want to be married and have children and keep their home. So they rather do other things. And I thought that was disastrous. And then we started changing their perception. We started trying to break the stereotypes. We started trying to correct their mentality. We started exposing them to the diverse careers that are in STEM fields. We started showing them women that looked like them, that were doing amazing things in science, and in extension, that probably had families. We started telling them that it's possible to do this and do that. It's possible to do everything. And that's why we have the name, the STEM Belle. And that's why our tagline is elegant in stilettos and confident in stiltos. You can do everything, actually. You just need to set your mind to it and get to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, in the region where I live, there is a, I wouldn't call that a societal segregation regarding the diverse plethora of professions that exist, but generally there is a general thinking that basically some professions are for girls and some are for boys. And generally they say, oh, but you don't see many girls at civil engineering faculties.
Yeah.
You don't see many girls at the University of Machinery, for instance, etc., etc. And when I remember when I was starting my university degree, I really wanted to study dermatology or cardiology, and definitely I was discouraged after hearing, like people saying, "Oh, you won't make it. Staying at the hospital is very difficult. Making chirurgical interventions is even more difficult. So for a woman must be difficult, especially for a woman who at the same time would like to balance family life and career." So basically these are the general stereotypes that also I'm really trying to basically create some awareness about that is wrong. Everything can be succeed if there is a motivation and basically hard work. That's the rule, nothing more. That's the magic rule, just hard work. And for instance, I would like to congratulate you for the wonderful work that you're doing at the STEM Belle organization. And for instance, how your work, if you can tell me how your work you do at the STEM Belle organization is basically creating more awareness during the era of COVID-19, I mean, awareness about One Health, and especially how that is influencing the STEM education for girls.
Sorry, can you take that again? The connection was a bit spotty, so I missed some bits of it. How my work is
Of
doing?
course. For instance, the work you're doing at the STEM Belle organization, basically how it creates awareness about the concept of One Health, and how, for instance, if we can relate this question also to the present situation of COVID-19, basically how is that influencing the STEM education for girls?
Perfect. So thank you for that question. So I'll start with how my work, creates awareness for One Health, or how it's going to help solve One Health problems.
Absolutely.
First, it's science. Take a look at everything that's happening around us. It's science. We need scientists to help solve those problems. Of course, in collaboration with entrepreneurs and policymakers and all of those interesting set of people. But we need scientists on board. Now, what my work is doing is we're raising and preparing the next generation of scientists. We're raising the next generation of women scientists, right? Who would come in and contribute to solving public health problems, One Health problems. Right. Now, we have a very beautiful relationship with One Health lessons, particularly, and this is so exciting because today, tomorrow, we're launching out a new program, which should be announced by the time this video goes up anyways. So this program is the STEM Belle Teachers Fellowship. And what we're doing at the Teachers Fellowship is that we're recruiting teachers from low-income communities. We're training them. we're upskilling them. We're giving them resources, computers, projectors, calculators, everything that they need to be 21st century STEM teachers. Now, one of the very important modules in this 8-day training that is starting tomorrow is the One Health Lessons Leaders Program. So the teachers are going to be going through that leaders program, and they're going to hopefully get certified to become One Health Lesson leaders, so that when they go back to their community schools, to their low-income community schools specifically, they can pass the message. They can explain to parents, they can explain to children, they can explain to other teachers, they can explain to their community members what the role One Health plays in sustainable ecosystem, and the role we as human beings play to ensure that we have a friendly and a habitable ecosystem. So I think this is all very interesting for me, and because these teachers are going to go home with knowledge that
could you repeat, please, the internet connection?
It's exciting for me because so it's exciting for me because I feel like these teachers are going to be going home with information, with knowledge that we probably wouldn't have been able to give to them save for One Health Lessons. So this is really exciting for me. I'm looking forward to the next 4 days when they'll be taking the training, and I'm looking forward to sharing more about how the teachers are going to use the knowledge they get from the One Health Lessons Leaders Program in their communities and in their schools. Now, the second bit of your question was how the work I'm doing is helping to, with the COVID situation. Now, the thing is, COVID struck and hit us all hard. But to be honest, people who live in developing countries or third world countries, especially people who are low income earners, who are economically disadvantaged, were probably more than twice hit. Now, girls specifically were terribly hit by COVID, by the impact of COVID. Not by COVID specifically, but by the impact of COVID. It's more like a case of one step forward, 2 steps back. We've been doing everything we can to move girls into education. COVID struck and it's taking us 2 steps back. The economy became really tight. Parents became really poor. Money isn't flowing as it should. There's a lot of more poverty and hunger in the land. It's expensive to put girls in school, and education is not entirely free in all parts of the world yet. Now, this means that parents might be forced to move girls into, hawking food, or, selling stuff, or even early marriage instead of going to school. It's also important to note here that in low-income communities, students, learners, girls do not have the elements of virtual learning. They don't have internet, they don't have devices. They probably have very spotty electricity. So this means that learning is difficult, and them sitting at home, their parents might be forced to move them into selling stuff or hawking stuff or assistance, early child labor. Right? Sorry about that. Early child labor, or might move them into early marriage. So now what the STEM Belle is trying to do is that we're equipping teachers, right? We're equipping teachers who would go into these communities to make sure that they are in touch with the girls, with students at all times. The teachers we're equipping will be able to organize small lessons, mathematics lessons, STEM lessons, English lessons, One Health lessons, to these students in low-income communities until things start to return to normal. It's starting to return to normal gradually, but it's very important that all hands be on deck. Yeah, it's going to take a while before it comes back to normal, but it's really important that all hands come on deck, and we are not taking our hands off deck. So we're preparing teachers, and we're also sending support to the students to make sure that girls remain in school. We need them to be in school if they will come into science, if they would sit on decision-making tables in the world, they need to be in school. And this is what my organization is doing.
Impressive work indeed. You're absolutely right. In this world, we need more and more to promote the importance of women's rights in terms of education. Like, girls really need to be in school to learn about the world of independency, because if they are independent, they are going to be able, like you for instance, to create an organization and make a difference in their community. Therefore, that is the small step that is actually a very big step, and there is that dire need for change that is maybe going to change not only their community, but also people will hear about the work of such organizations. And that there is where collaborations emerge. Like, for instance, the current collaboration you are
having with health lessons.
Health lessons.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Doreen, for this impressive interview. It was a pleasure talking with you. I really did learn a lot about egg safety and hen
quality.
quality as well. And hen, I didn't hear before the term or the notion of hen. I mean, regarding animal health. Most probably because also I'm not a native English speaker. Therefore, we always mention, just the word chicken, and that's it.
I get you.
That's it. Thank you really a lot for your time, and definitely everyone should visit the official website of STEMBEL, which again means a beautiful girl in science, from the French word belle. Beautiful. Therefore, we're going to mention this link of the website in the description box of the YouTube channel. Thank you a lot once again, and take care of yourself, and all the best with the future activities of STEMBEL.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hristina. I'm so grateful and very privileged to be on this platform.
Indeed. Thank you.